Alright. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت السميع العليم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه سيدنا أحمد وبارك وسلم عليه. In the session last week, we tried to perform a basic sort of a survey to understand and establish that whatever we think we are saying, whatever we think we've come up with is not actually us at all. It is effectively a product of the people we spend our time with, of the culture we're a part of. Uh, that was effectively what we did last week. What I'd like to do this week is follow up in a similar manner, but in very, very broad brushstrokes, uh, canvas uh, Christian history in the next 20 or 25 minutes so that we can understand where this culture is coming from. Again, the last session tried to establish that we are a product of our culture, and this session will try to establish where that culture is coming from and how that culture is in some very, very basic fundamental on very fundamental levels, quite different from what you would expect from a truly Islamic civilization to have. So again, if we start with a very in the pre-Islamic world, there were two military, economic, social powerhouses. These were two empires. An empire, by definition, tries to expand its territory. It is always on the lookout for ways and means. It is always on the lookout for people to conquer, for land to conquer, and to expand its territory and boundaries. So there were two such empires in the pre-Islamic world. One was the Roman Empire, the other was the Persian Empire. These were huge. They would fight effectively on a set calendar amongst each other, and the state religion of the Persian Empire was Zoroastrianism. They would effectively worship fire, and the Roman Empire was pagan in its religion. Before the advent of Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, the state religion of the Roman Empire was pagan, or there was no pagan religion. There was no state religion. The emperor of the time would issue edicts based on pure superstition. If things wouldn't be going their way, they'd ask people to offer sacrifices. When Isa alayhi salam came, he obviously preached against that. Now, there's something very interesting which has effectively been lost to history. We don't realize that. Hazrat Isa alayhi salam was sent to the tribe of Bani Sa'id. Christianity, like Judaism, is not a proselytizing religion. It is not supposed to be preached to people from outside of the tribe of Bani Sa'id. So when Hazrat Isa alayhi salam was being persecuted, but he was still continuing on with his mission. But the Roman political class would also, to a large extent, turn a blind eye to Hazrat Isa alayhi salam and to his direct followers. They were being prosecuted, but they were not being prosecuted by the Roman Empire per se. The local rulers or the unruly mobs of very immediate localities would gang up on them and would put them through trials. But the Roman Empire had a very basic sort of a policy of see no evil, tell no evil. They wouldn't want. They didn't want to react to anyone, to people like this to Isa alayhi salam, because in reacting they knew that they would be in the end fomenting more rebellion and civil wars and civil strife. So there's a hodgepodge of uh, mm, probably dozens or maybe hundreds of religions of different strength, and they effectively let them lie as they were. But Paul, one of the most important figures in Christian history, he started proselytizing, and which effectively brought mainstream Christians under the Christian radar. And as soon as that happens, Christians were now being persecuted uh, everywhere they were. Some ulama have said that the early Christians were persecuted more than Sahaba Karam were. The early Christians were persecuted more than Sahaba Karam were. And in reading the histories of the Sahaba Karam, Rizwanullahi Ta'ala alayhim ajmain, we understood how stressful those situations were for them. Christians in those earliest eras were literally put in the Colosseum for lions and other beasts to eat. Now, it's obviously arguable if this happened only to Christians, because some historians have said that this happened not just to Christians but also to all criminals, to everyone the Roman Empire would view as criminal. But this did happen to Christians and much more besides that. Things came to a head when in AD 313, the Roman Emperor Nero issued an edict where he brought the might of the Roman Empire against the Christians of the Roman lands. They were now being officially persecuted. They could have no political power. They could have no political representation. They could have no social representation. They could own no land, and any tract of land or political power or political office they had up till now was stripped away from them. This edict was done away with in 10 years' time by another Roman emperor by the name of Constantine. Constantine, this emperor is universally Christians call him Constantine the Great. This is the guy who changed his the the center of the Roman Empire was changed from where it used to be to Constantinople. He founded effectively the city, and the city of Constantinople is named after him. Very soon after that, Christianity became the state religion. Now, uh, this is effectively turning reality on its head. People who are being persecuted left, right, and center since very late, now enjoy um, unsurpassed influence and power in the uh, in one of the two largest empires in the history of mankind. Uh, Not many people say it like this, but it is apparent if we read history that much of the persecution of Jews that follows from this point onwards is at the behest of Christians. And Jews do not enjoy their time while they had a few brief instances of very bad experiences with the Roman Empire earlier, but when Hazrat Isa alayhi salatu wasalam was sent by Allah, they did have some privileges in the Roman Empire. They did not interfere with many other people. The pagan religions did not interfere with them. They were not asked to perform ritual sacrifices to pagan gods. That they had a few privileges in some areas. But after the Roman Empire becomes Christian, that privilege effectively washes away in a few years' time. Very soon after, this is now 323, in 325 AD, Emperor Constantine calls the first council of Nicaea. There's a list of agenda items that were supposed to be discussed here in the first council of Nicaea. But one of the most important things that the bishops and cardinals and Christian senior officials from all over Christian land, one of the most serious things they discussed, matters of discussion for that first meeting was whether Hazrat Isa alayhi salatu wasalam was begotten, which means did Allah or did God or the Godhead, as Christians call Allah. Was Isa alayhi salatu wasalam begotten? Was he given birth to? Or was he created? This is interesting because if Isa alayhi salam is begotten, then he is not created, by which uh, this team of Christian theologians meant was that since he is uncreated, he has always been there, which makes him part of God, which makes him part of the Godhead. On the other hand, if Isa alayhi salam was created without a father, that means he is a creation. He started his life or his existence at a certain point in time. Now, this has obviously very understandable theological ramifications, implications, and they decided upon Hazrat Isa alayhi salam being begotten son of Allah. Ma'azallah. There were some senior theologians who disagreed with that. They were exiled there and they were called heretics. And this followed for uh, um, the next 13 or 14 or 1500 years, since very late, since a couple of years ago, when the Christian Church would claim anyone to not being seen to be not following the Christian creed, not necessarily practice, but the faith system, as heretics. Now we can just imagine the astounding levels of confusion that ensued. Christianity is now the religion of one of the largest empires known to mankind. It has spread to many corners, to many areas of the world. It is supported officially by one of the two strongest emperors in the world at the moment. And there has now, at the behest of a king and a few senior Christian theologians, at the behest of a handful of people, Christ has become someone he has never been seen to be till that time. Now, the Christian world is thrown into utter confusion, and this goes on. Now, this church has solidified itself as a center of power. Uh, Kings, emperors, uh, people we call Nawab in Urdu, in Pakistan and India, uh, fief owners of varying sizes, all of them look towards the church for legitimacy. If the church says they're okay, if they have the right to rule, then people would follow them. Now, we're not saying that the Christian church was all evil or all corrupt. We're just saying that the culture that was fermented uh, uh, at the First Council of Nicaea, that stuck to Christianity and shaped Christianity for the next 1700 years. We are still feeling the effects of those Vatican councils. We had a Vatican Council 30 or 40 years ago in 1964, I believe, uh, where again they decided upon things which effectively meant that Christianity now has changed its stances on certain positions and now believes in a different position, which again throws Christianity all over the world in massive disarray. Now, this goes on, and in the next 100 or so years, uh, we get what modern critical Bible scholars senior most professors and researchers at the best European and American universities. Uh, they call these forgeries. Uh, so much so that out of the 28 books in the New Testament, anywhere between 7 to 11 books are considered by experts to be forgeries. Now, this is huge. At a very basic, at a very fundamental level, what this means is no one actually knows what Christianity is. If the Bible, if the New Testament is, if 40% of the New Testament is under a very dark cloud, if it is considered by experts to be a lie, and was not considered to be a forgery back then because people just accepted what they were given by the centralized authority known as the Vatican or any centralized authority. They considered that to be the official teachings of Christianity and as the official position of effectively Isa alayhi salam himself. Now, we can just imagine the confusion this would throw the whole of the Christian lands in, because people who were on the correct belief would now have to rethink and reevaluate all of their belief systems from the scratch. And this is so big that that Christian lands would ostensibly Christian emperors and kings would fight amongst each other for very petty issues, and would use Christianity as Muslims today use as Islam for political ends only. So we now have in Syria and Egypt in the third and fourth centuries the eruption of monasticism. We have now monks. Some of them are offshoots of Christian monasteries of churches. Some of them are people who understand that the Christian church, the centralized authority, not the simple average Christian, but the Christian church, the authority, has effectively lost its way. It's more political, it's more worldly in its designs than it has ever been, and there effectively is very little service to Christianity from these centralized bodies. They're all about the world. وَلَمْ يُرِدْ إِلَّا الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيا. Their designs are all for the riches of this world, the possession, the affluence of this world. Some people break away from society and become monks because that is the Christian ideal of not giving in to your not giving into the most basic of your desires, because that is what Christianity says Hazrat Isa alayhi salatu wasalam used to do. There's a there's a microphone on. Could we have that closed, please? Jazakallah. Alright. These are very broad brushstrokes of history. In the fourth century, we now are at a point where Christianity is effectively controlling the wills and wishes of the Christian empire, and Christianity is now increasingly myopic in its view. It is driving pagans, polytheists from all over the world into the ground. They're killing them, they're exiling them, they're taking their lands and their properties away from them. Um, and this is important not just because this will set the mood for Christianity for the later centuries, but this is also important because this effectively led to the downfall of the Christian Roman Empire. This happens if one of the most important things that happens because of this attitude is that there is a research library in Alexandria in Egypt. It is run by pagans, by people who are not Christians. There are all sorts of discussions happening there, theological, scientific, You'll find Neoplatonists, Neo-Aristotelian philosophers over there. You'll find scientists, engineers, chemists, physicists. You'll find linguists there. You'll find people arranging the heliocentric model. Uh, uh, you'll find experts of medicine over there. So this is considered what we now know of as the Library of Alexandria. People consider historians consider this to be the first, effectively the first research university of the world. This is led by a woman by the name of Hypatia, and she is not a Christian. She is, which makes her a pagan. She is ne- neo-Aristotelian, I think, if I remember this correctly. Uh, she obviously challenges Christian ideas, but she tries to play it safe. But the Christian mob does not like that. So they burn the library. She manages to save a few hundred books, probably 200 or 300 books, and they run away from Alexandria. They set up a new establishment, but uh, the Christian zealots, mobs which you find in all religions all over the world today, they track her and they kill her. They kill her by literally ripping her body to shreds. Now, what this does to the Roman Empire is, Roman Empire was considered to be not very good at innovating itself, but it was considered to be excellent at accepting innovation. Because again, being an empire, one of the primary things it used to do was to fight wars. And it's very easy and it's generally very acceptable for people who have put their lives on the line to accept ingenious ideas, new innovations, so that they may be able to save their lives and loot and plunder in other people's territories. So the Roman Empire was very good at accepting innovation, but was not very good at um, um, coming up with innovation itself. This place was this Library of Alexandria, and the people who used to basically philosophize and produce science there. They were effectively the engine of innovation for the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire lost it by at the hands of its own zealots. But what this also tells us is that there is a general air of um, non-acceptance, if we may use the word, in Christians of that time towards anything that they consider, um, well, not in these terms. I think I'm being quite brave in saying this, but Christianity was really not very amenable to accepting science, especially when it contravened whatever it thought to be the correct Christian position. For instance, Christianity for the first, actually the 1500 years, for the first 15 or 1600 years, considered to be the Earth as the center of the solar system. There are many reasons for this. One of the reasons is Christian uh, theology. The framework was quite heavily influenced by Platonic thought, by the frameworks Plato and his disciples had put into place before the advent of Isa alayhi salatu wassalam. And in the Platonic scheme of things, uh, uh, the Earth was supposed to be the center of the solar system of everything. That is idea number one, or the reason number one. The reason number two is, if Isa alayhi salatu wasalam is God and he's the Son of God and the Word of God was sent down upon him and he's part of the Godhead and the Trinity, then it stands to reason. It's a very warped form of logic, but it is logical to believe that, or to contend, to argue that the place where Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, the Son, the Father, and the Word were all revealed all came down and affected directly. That place is so pure and pristine and so sacred that stands to reason that no other place except for this earth can be the center of all existence. So the church did not accept that. It was Copernicus in 1500s and then Galileo in the 1600s who actually established that all of us in this solar system actually revolve around the sun. And in 1640s, I believe it was, when Galileo Galilei established this heliocentric model, and the central authority, the church with the capital C, actually imprisoned him for life for the remainder of his life. He lived for 9 or 10 more years after he disseminated this piece of information, when he argued openly that the Earth is not the center of the universe. At least the center of this solar system, at least, is the sun, and all of us revolve around the sun. The sun. The church obviously did not like this, and he was imprisoned for the rest of his 9 or 10 years worth of remaining lifespan. He was imprisoned in his own house, and he died there. So what we see is that the Christian faith, well, we shouldn't call it faith because Christianity is something other than, as Muslims, you understand that Christianity is something much different than what the Christian church says it is. So, but we can safely say that the Christian church, the attitude exhibited by the Christian church was not very amenable, was not very welcoming to scientific inquiry. Now, we do understand that this is not the case uh, uh, in Islamic history. Allah Rabbul Izzat exhorts us in the Quran to think, to ponder, to look at signs, to look around ourselves, and to see God's hand in everything that is happening around us. Much of, if not all of, the scientific developments, the astounding scientific developments that happened for 800 years or so in Muslim lands was directly a result of, or indirectly, a result of Islam's exhortations, Islam's encouragement towards understanding the world around us. But that is not the case with Christianity. And what we wanted to drive at in this session was that Christian land's attitude towards science and religion is very peculiar to Europe. And the rest of the world actually historically has not shared in those experiences. It is the European experience of acrimony and animosity and lack of apparent compatibility between religion and science that has translated into the West being as anti-religious, or as a-religious, at least, as we see it today. This is still not the case with culturally and traditionally Islamic lands, Alhamdulillah. But this is increasingly happening though. We see this in Pakistan and many other Islamic, traditionally Muslim places. But this has been Europe's history for the past 15 or 1600 years, effectively. And there are hundreds of examples that we could recount in trying to, if you want to establish how acrimonious this relationship between religion and science was in white Christian Europe. And a very peculiar, um, a very localized experience that the rest of the world did not share with white Christian Europe. So what this leaves us with is a very jaundiced view, a very biased view of compatibility of a, a, a relationship that enjoys a lot of harmony between a relationship between science and religion that should enjoy a lot of harmony. But what we get from the West is a very biased, a very jaundiced view. And as we discussed in the first session, this jaundiced view is effective is if has effectively been preached to and accepted for many different social, cultural, political, economic reasons by the rest of the world, and is the pace of this acceptance is actually increasing. This this very broad survey of a very specific but uh, uh, a topic with which we could color with a lot of details and a lot of instances, historical accidents, events that took place over 15 or 1600 years, was simply to show that, as we've said this once or twice already, that this experience of science effectively negating religion in response to religion leaving no room for scientific development is very, very peculiar, a very localized history of Europe. We do not share in that. The people who are alive today in the rest in largely Christian lands face many issues on a daily basis, which calls into question whether they understand science to begin with or not, or if their understanding of their own religion is faulty, or if the religion that they're following, it could be any, it could be Judaism, Christianity, Islam, it could be Hinduism, it could be any. If the traditional religion that they and their forebears and their ancestors have been following for the past so many decades and centuries actually has a place or not in the modern world. We'll try to answer that specific question in the next session. I'm going to share a very important and a thoroughly enjoyable, inshallah, short article with you on the WhatsApp group. On a WhatsApp group, it is written by one of the most important and influential thinkers in sociology. His name is Maximilian Weber. This person is extremely important and has done something seminal in helping us to understand why Europe is the way it is, uh, why the culture and the ethos as exhibited by Europe today is the way it is. So in the next session, I'll really appreciate it if we could read this very short article. It's going to be very effective in establishing uh, the truth of what we just said just now, that this journey of uh, this very jaundiced or biased or incomplete understanding of the relationship between science and religion being one of acrimony and hostility and not of harmony and compatibility is a very European view, and it is not historically shared by the rest of the world. We'll meet again, inshallah, next time. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.